Hello, 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 LinkedIn. Hello, everyone. Um, I was first waiting for my guests to come. Then we were having technical challenges, which were all my fault. And so I was just getting all frazzled and concerned. But it's all working now, and we're here. I'm so excited to be interviewing my guest today for a few reasons. So, you know that I have been massively obsessed with the concept of personal branding and everything that has to do with building a personal brand. And so, I'm exceptionally curious to speak with people and learn from people who are also building strong personal brands. I'm trying not to laugh because I'm seeing my guest on the screen under and she's organizing her space, which is what I was doing just 10 minutes ago. So it's making me laugh. So my guest today is a really interesting woman with a really interesting business and entrepreneurial journey, somebody who's been building a strong personal brand and is looking to scale it even further. I'll let her tell us about her business. I also, fun fact, love the fact that Fox News called Jen Glantz, my guest today, the weirdest ever. I thought that was the coolest compliment to get, all things considered. She's also been interviewed on the Today Show, Good Morning America. She has a book. She's an entrepreneur, as I mentioned, and again, somebody who's scaling her personal brand. So I feel that I should not be holding a coffee. I should be holding a glass of wine as we're talking and getting to know each other. Jen, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. And hello, everyone watching on LinkedIn.
And by the way, if you are watching already, if you have logged in, click like or comment or let us know that you're here. I often find out after the fact that you watched, you'll mention, I really enjoyed this guest or that guest, but tell me if you're here. I'd love to know. Um, Jen, I don't even know where to start. So take us back to the day where you posted just an ad in the newspaper. What, why, how, and then what happened after?
Absolutely. So I never knew I was going to become an entrepreneur. I always knew that I wanted to start a business, but I wasn't sure what. And this was at a time in my life where all of my friends were getting engaged and getting married, and I was always their bridesmaid. And at first it was fun, it was exciting, but then it became expensive. And another thing I noticed was that distant friends were asking me to be their bridesmaid. So one day I just thought to myself, okay, if people I hardly know are asking me to be their bridesmaid, maybe I could make this a business. I had no business experience, but I was very determined and also very stubborn and, of course, very quirky and odd. So I went to Craigslist.com. I posted an ad offering my services as a bridesmaid for strangers, and the ad went viral. And I mean that I checked my email and I had hundreds of requests from people who wanted to hire me. And by the way, there was never a business like this that existed in the world. And here I was putting out the idea of a business and finding that there was a need for it. So much so that people were desperate to hire this service even before it launched.
It's incredible. Can you explain to me why? Is it people don't have enough friends, or is it, I don't know, were you saying as a guest, I'm going to, I don't know, also MC, I'm going to bring the fun aspect? I mean, why was there such a demand for this service?
I think it's a combination of one thing people don't realize is that when they get married, it's pure chaos. And even if you have the bestest of friends, they don't always know how to support you. So a lot of the people who hire me, they have 6 other bridesmaids, but their bridesmaids are a bit of a mess, or they don't want to overwhelm them with the tasks of doing all the dirty work. But then there's another section of people who hire me that don't have close friends. And I know that sounds odd, but 1 in 4 people do not have a best friend. And I feel like some days I'm one of those people. I'm engaged, I'm getting married, I might have to hire my own bridesmaid. So while some people might think that that's weird, it's actually pretty common. So those are 2 main reasons why people hire me. And that's what I started to see in that inbox of emails, was that there was such a need for this service, but nobody started it.
It's really fascinating. And so, do you become friends with people after as a result? Because I would imagine you get right, you're with somebody in their up and down roller coaster type of emotional stage in their life. So, have you made a lot of friends that way?
Yeah, I've been doing it for 6 years. I've worked hundreds of weddings, so I'm not friends with everybody. The majority of my clients I never see after the wedding, but I'd say every year I make about 5 new friends that I keep in touch with, I get together with, that I have built a relationship with. The first person who ever hired me, her name is Ashley from Maple Grove, Minnesota. We've seen each other throughout the years. We still stay in touch. We just became pen pals during quarantine. So it does depend, but I have made friends through this.
It's fascinating. And so people hire you, what, a few months before the wedding, or how is it structured?
People usually hire me anywhere between a year to a week before. I'm working a wedding this Sunday, and she only hired me about 2 weeks ago. So it really depends on when they realize they need this service. Because remember, this is not a business that exists. So some people aren't Google searching, I need a bridesmaid, until it is super urgent, while others have seen this all over television and they know they want this. I've had so many clients who are like, Jen, I've been waiting to get engaged just so I could hire you. I heard about this service 3 years ago. So that's sort of the cool power of the internet and just marketing in general.
Crazy. And that's hence the power of building a personal brand, right? Which I know you're looking to scale even further. I know you're interested in having a reality show of your own one day. So just tell me, when you were growing up, what did you want to be?
That is my favorite question. When I was growing up and I was very young, I wanted to be a kindergarten teacher. And after that dream, I wanted to be a poet. I've always been a writer. I've always loved writing. So I had two very different and unique careers as a kid. I grew up and I did take creative writing in college and I became a writer. But there was always a spark in me to do more. I mean, I remember playing with Barbies growing up, and my Barbies didn't just hang out at a fake pool. They were plotting things. They were creating things. I mean, they were really busy Barbies. So I always knew I wanted something more.
I relate to that. I relate to the very practical approach to Barbie play, and I relate to that 100%. But so now that you have been building your personal brand, and yes, it's very important, especially when you have a business that doesn't really exist, right? So you kind of have to create that awareness beyond the Craigslist ads. So in as far as, Jen Glantz personal brand, you want to be known as a bridesmaid for hire, you want to be known as an entrepreneur, you want to be known as a quirky public figure, influencer in a certain sphere. What's your goal?
It's interesting because for so much of your life, you're always taught to be just one thing. People would say to me, Jen, just do one thing, be one person, but I never felt okay with that. And that's why I don't think I did well in the corporate world, because I couldn't just do my job. I wanted to know about other people's jobs. So even now as an entrepreneur, people always say, oh, you're just the bridesmaid for hire. And it's like, no, I'm so many things. I've been an author. I published 3 books. I have a podcast. I'm a motivational speaker. I teach courses. So I do a lot. And I don't think my brand fits into an influencer category or just an entrepreneur category. I think it's a grow with Jen category. I've always, since I started my blog in 2010, I've always just taken everything that I've experienced, all my mistakes, and I've bottled them up in different ways, from blog posts to podcasts to courses to coaching, as a way of saying, hey, I put myself out there. I've made the mistakes. Let me help you. So I don't even think that my personal brand fits into a box, and I don't think anyone else's should. When I teach my personal branding classes, people are like, well, I've worked in this industry for 10 years and now I want to pivot and I'm scared. No, you should be open to it. You are a human being who is supposed to be so many things. Now we just have to package it together.
I love that, and I agree with that. But how do you package multiple things together?
I basically just have looked at myself and look at what I do, and I've said, okay, you know what, Jen, you are the following things. You are an entrepreneur, an author, a podcast host, and a creator. And when I meet people on the street, it's often hard to say all of that without them being overwhelmed. So I usually say, look, I run my own business, and my business involves a couple of different things. It involves book writing, podcasting, being a bridesmaid for hire, and offering courses and coaching. So it does take a little bit of explaining, but you see that more and more. I feel like I meet people all the time who are like, well, I am a this, but I also am a this and this. So when I teach personal branding, I always say, make your sentence of who you are have commas. So I am an entrepreneur who started Bridesmaid for Hire, and I'm a podcast host, 3-time author, and course creator. That organizes the sentence with the and the commas.
And it's interesting because you said, the ideas grow with Jen, right? So that's the overarching idea, which gives you so much liberty and power to pivot in however way you want as you also grow, right? As you explore different things. I think it's interesting. But a lot of people are opposed to the concept of personal branding. A lot of people think that it's an exercise in narcissism, right? So, and I'm sure you've heard that because I've heard that many times. So, what do you say to that when people are like, oh, it's just people who are hunting for likes and views and fans, and that's not me because I'm above that? What do you say to those people?
I say you have it all wrong. Personal branding at its core is understanding yourself and your value and how to communicate that. I think that when people think of personal branding, they confuse it with influencer marketing and influencer strategy. I'm not telling anybody to go create an Instagram page. All I'm saying is, can you actually explain who you are and communicate your value for whatever your goal is? And everyone's goal is different. So I think people confuse personal branding with social media. Social media is one tiny little piece of personal branding, but there's so much more. And the average person has absolutely no idea how to talk about themselves. They stress about talking about themselves. That's personal branding.
So, how do you help people, or do you help people understand then the essence of who they are? Because, as you said, that is step one. And I fully agree with you. We often say, and we see it, a lot of people say, I'm a personal branding coach. I will teach you how to post on LinkedIn. But social media is just a very small component. LinkedIn is a smaller component yet, right? So that does not a personal brand make. So what is your advice to people, or what was your journey in understanding, what is the essence of, who we are? How do we find that?
You can't post on LinkedIn if you don't know yourself. So I call this in my course, section 1 is called Take Inventory on You. And I force people to sit there, and it's hard. It's really tough work. I force them to ask themselves questions that they never have asked. And I do this every single year on my birthday. On my birthday, I go sit outside by myself and I do this. I ask people, what are your strengths? And I'm not asking you for words. I'm asking you for putting your strengths in motions. So I'm a good listener, and then I want you to explain how. I ask people for their weaknesses and how they're going to improve them. I ask them for their accomplishments, their life goals. So taking inventory on yourself is you opening up and being honest about questions you've either lied about on job interviews or you just don't ask yourself. If you can't tell me who you are and what you're good at and what you're not good at, then you have no clue who you are. And by the way, these things change on a yearly basis. And in 2020, they've changed 10 times, So we have to go through the motions of understanding ourselves and translating our past experiences into value that can maybe be prevalent in different industries or different projects we want to start.
I find that a lot of people don't do that because, well, first of all, just that whole exercise in self-awareness is daunting, right? It can get emotional. You start digging deep. It's a process. That's number one. But also number two, a lot of people are afraid, I find, of realizing what they really want to be doing because it's not so easy. We have bills to pay, we have responsibilities, right? I have a lot of people that say, well, in my ideal world, I would be, let's say, a TV show host. That's my big passion. I want to be on camera, but I have bills to pay, so I have to keep my corporate job. And now that I've opened up this can of worms, well, now you can't put the lid back on because then that's all you start thinking about. Yeah. So what is your recommendation? What do you usually say to people in that case?
One, I say, look, it's going to be an emotional process. And I push people to be honest. So throughout the course, I have checkpoints when I'm like, wait, I know you lied. So let's do this over. So I force you to be honest. That's step one, because usually we lie to ourselves, and you definitely lie to yourself the first time you try to do this. But two, look, I'm never, ever going to tell anyone to quit their job. I have bills to pay. I never quit my job to start my side hustle. I worked full time for years while I was building Bridesmaid for Hire. So I always tell people it's okay to know that you want something different, but also how you're going to start now with baby steps. So if all of a sudden you realize you want to be a TV host, but you have bills to pay and you're working in finance, well, you have to figure out, okay, how many extra hours do you have every day? And don't try to tell me you don't. You do. Look at your phone time, how much time you're on your phone on Instagram all day. You have an hour to spare. Start building it now. So I am realistic. I don't want people to just throw away their lives, but I want you to mess up your life, which I think is a little bit different.
I love that you say that, and we're aligned in that because, there's this big rhetoric that you're either all in or you're not going to make it. But that's just not always realistic, right? And then you feel, you've missed that window of opportunity when you were, in the last year of university and maybe the first year after. And now what, right? Now I can't be all in until I am all in. So we're aligned in that. I love that. I love that advice. By the way, Bridesmaid for Hire, your business, have you hired other bridesmaids for hire? Where are you at with the business?
Yeah, I've had over 50,000 people apply to work for the company, and I've hired and fired over the years.
50,000 people applied. Wow, that's amazing. Sorry I interrupted. That is so
Oh,
cool.
no, I mean, it is such a weird fact that I just take for granted, but I've hired people over the years. I've also found a way to have a training course available to those who want to start their own business. I find that people want to do this job, but they don't know what the job really is. And what they want to do is just start something for themselves. So because I can't hire all 50,000, I have all these different training courses I offer people who want to do something cool with their life.
How do people usually react when you tell them about the business? I mean, so Fox News called you weird.
Yeah.
How did that come about, by the way?
Well, I do a lot of live TV interviews, and you never know what they're going to say. And one of the first things I learned is that a lot of these TV hosts are either going to roll their eyes on camera at you or while the camera's on you. So many times I'd be on TV and I'd be speaking and I'd watch out of the corner of my eye, them go, oh, like, this is so stupid. But then I look at myself and what I've created and all that I've done, and I'm proud of it. I believe in it. And it doesn't matter to me that a TV host doesn't. But I do find that either people are weirded out and they don't like it because they don't understand it, or people are like, I wish I had this when I got married. In the dating world, when I was single, dating was a nightmare because a lot of the people I dated didn't understand what I did. But when I found my fiance, luckily he Googled me before, and he not only understood, but he really thought the business was awesome. So I gave him like 10 bonus points.
I love that. My fiance Googled me before. I love that. That's an awesome line. Really interesting. And, another reason why I find a lot of people are hesitant to put themselves out there and, build a personal brand, even if they feel that they have a message and something to say. Well, one of the reasons is the haters, right? And the feedback you might get. So, I've been called every name in the book, and I haven't even exposed myself that much, right? But the more you do, the more you hear. So what do you do with that? Does it sting? Does it affect you? What are some of the comments you've gotten? And then how do you handle it?
I've been writing publicly in newspapers and magazines since I was in college. And that's really when a lot of the comments started. And I think earlier on, it put a stop sign on me. It made me question, should I still be doing this? Because I'm getting so many comments. But then if you read the comments, you realize they're never really about you or what you're doing. So a lot of the comments on my articles had nothing to do with the writing. It had to do with me personally. Like, I don't like you because you're blonde or you have brown hair. It was like, okay, well, that's not what I'm doing here. Even now, till this day, I get so many nasty comments, whether it's an Amazon review of a book or just comments on social media or messages, or I get random emails from fake email addresses that are horrible. And it does hurt, and I will never lie about that. Even till this day, it burns, it hurts. But I always have to remember that if a person is sitting down, taking time out of their day to write this, there's a lot of pain that they're experiencing in their life. And I can't fix that. I can't help that. I can only just feel proud of what I am doing. So what I would say is, look, if you're going to put yourself out there, you are going to open yourself up to these comments. You have to find a way of processing them. What I've learned is that I'll spend maybe 3 minutes feeling horrible about myself, and then I'll have to push it aside, meaning I won't look at it. I won't screenshot it. I'll just have to let it go. And even still this day, that's hard to do sometimes.
Yeah, it depends on, the day and the also emotional space you're already in, right? Sometimes it can, if you're on top of the world, it rolls off. If you're in a low, or as Simon Sinek says, a behind day, it hits quite hard.
Yeah.
What about the flip side of that? Then there are people who say they fear the opposite. They don't fear the trolls, but they fear that I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to, bare my soul. I'm going to be vulnerable with who I am and what I bring to the world. And what if there are crickets? What if nobody cares and there is no traction? And that to many people is even scarier than getting the negativity. What do you feel about that?
Well, nobody will care, so I always be very honest about that. People say, I'm going to start a podcast. And then if they don't get 100 listens, they feel bad about themselves. I mean, you have to start doing things with the expectation that nobody will care. If you're only doing something because you hope people will care, you're not doing it for the right reasons. Mm-hmm. And I've had to learn that the hard way with writing. I wrote for myself because every publication denied me in 2010. And when I wrote for my blog, only my mom and my dad read it. But if I would have stopped because of that, I never would have published 3 books years later. So I want you to think, look, people won't care at first. But if you are putting out value, and that comes after you put out a couple of different things, a couple of different versions, and you're being smart with how you're marketing it, people will eventually care. But things take time. People will not care overnight. The crickets, honestly, that's the time when you should be improving, because usually the first couple things you throw out there aren't that good. So even when there are crickets, you should be using that time to improve, because later on when the spotlight's on you, that's a lot harder.
What was the fuel that kept you going? So in those times where it was just, your immediate circle that was reading what you were writing, what made you keep writing? What was it inside that was so fulfilling that you continued writing?
I think I just couldn't stop. I think I couldn't stop because I knew it was what I needed to do. I wanted to do. I had a passion for it. It kept me up at night. I would spend my Saturday writing. It was something that I just couldn't stop. I think I was doing it for the right reasons. So many people are like, I want to write a book, but they won't actually sit down and write the book. Well, then maybe you shouldn't write a book. Maybe you should have a podcast or something else. So I think if you're doing something for the right reasons, you're fueled to keep on doing it, even when the rejection letters come or nobody is watching. But aside from that, I think it's how dedicated are you to your project? And if you know that things take years and not seconds, I think you have more dedication. I think a lot of the biggest problem is people look at successful people and they don't hear the truth from them. I mean, very few mentors of mine put it out there that it took years for them to publish a book. They just published the book. So people look at that and they think it's easy. But once you realize the process is not overnight, you realize you have to put the hard work in order to get to that level. And if you don't, you can't really skip steps in a lot of these things.
But do you feel that so I have two different questions. In order to build a successful personal brand that scales, well, we all have a personal brand, right? Personal brand is people's perception of us. So we all have it, right? Then it's a question of how wide is the reach and how big the network. But to really scale the reach of your personal brand, do you feel, first of all, do you have to be an extrovert?
I don't think you do, but I think you need to know who you are and make that your personal brand. What I don't want people to do is think their personal brand should be somebody that they're not. If you're not this person, don't put yourself out there like that person. If you are introverted, if that is who you are, you should own that inside of your personal brand. I think another big misconception is, you have a personal brand, you need to be doing IG stories, you need a podcast, you need a this. But if you're more of an introverted person, you don't need all of those bells and whistles, but you have to own yourself. And to own yourself, you have to know yourself. And I think people skip that step. I think when we look at personal brand, we look at these 3 celebrities we want to copy, and then we go and we become identical copies of them and not truly who we are.
Mm-hmm. What about being a strong communicator? So, because as you said, you don't have to go and explore every form of media, right? But you have to explore one of them. So you either have to be able to speak really well or write really well. So what is your recommendation there? Have you worked with people that say, you know what, I'm not comfortable on camera. You can tell they're not an amazing communicator. And then when they write something, it's, ugh. So then what do you do?
You don't have to do either. Not every personal brand needs to have a TV show or needs to have a blog or needs to have an email. But what I would say is you need to tell your story well, and that can be done in the written form. Not everyone majored in creative writing like I did, and you're probably better off. But one of the best tricks I've learned is that if you don't know how to write about yourself or you're not the best writer, stop writing. Take your phone, do voice to text, and talk it out. The way you talk shows more personality. It's more smooth. So that's the only thing you really need. Level 1 personal branding is being able to tell your story, your 3-paragraph essay, your tagline. Just start with that and then figure out what kind of extensions you want out of your personal brand. But it's not one size fits all.
What is your mission, would you say? What fuels your fire right now? What is the impact? You said you're also a motivational speaker, right? So what does that mean? What is the impact you want to have on people? What is the message you're trying to bring to the world?
I've always wanted to help people disrupt their lives for a good reason, to make it count. I know what it feels like to feel stuck. I know what it feels like to feel like you're lost. And I want people to wake up and get started on whatever that thing is that they want to do. My podcast is called You're Not Getting Any Younger, because that's what I say to myself pretty much every day. When I want to give up, when I want to stop, when I don't want to do something, I keep telling myself, but Jen, you're not getting any younger. And that doesn't mean age matters. It doesn't matter. A lot of successful people start projects at age 50 or 60 or 70. What that mantra is saying is that, Jen, you don't have infinite time. Your time can run out in 5 minutes or tomorrow. Stop putting things off. And I think that that's just my ultimate mission, is to help other people, because truly it helps me keep going. I know that I've accomplished a lot and I seem successful, but I have a lot of really tough days. I have a personal life that I don't share that always is falling apart in its own way. So I think by helping other people, by waking them up, by getting them started, by letting them know that you're not stuck in this life or with this job you have, I think it keeps reminding me of the power of just putting forward those baby steps.
Mm-hmm. And referring to something you just mentioned, you said I also have my, down days and difficult days and personal life to take care of. Another thing that people often say when it comes to the topic of personal branding is, I'm a private person. I don't want to expose myself. But then at the same time, people want to see the real, right? And you were thinking of a reality show, but even without a reality show, once you start putting yourself out there, usually you bring your whole self, right? A lot of people have issue with that. And a lot of people ask me, well, how personal do I need to get? How much do I share? What's appropriate? What's not? What are your thoughts on that?
You have to set your own boundaries. The thing is, I have been publicizing my life since 2010, but it's only a third of my life. And I'm not hiding something. I'm not necessarily not showing off my true self, but I'm not showing off my full self. And what I mean by that is, there's parts of my life that I choose not to share, and that's okay. But I've made that decision, and you should do the same. I have friends who are entrepreneurs who are doing different things, and they post on social media, but they leave out the fact that they have 3 kids, or they leave out the fact that they live in a certain city. They only post what they want to post. So when you think of your personal brand, set boundaries. I always think about, okay, what are like the 5 or 10 things I'm comfortable sharing about my real life? That's true, that's vulnerable, that's real. But oh my goodness, do I have closets filled with just my own secrets, my personal life, things that I don't share. I think what people think is that when you have a personal brand, you're showing your 24/7, but you're not. You're showing the parts of you that you're comfortable sharing. And that's okay. There's beauty in that. You can still be open and relatable with that. But everyone should have a part of their life that is still just theirs. The world doesn't need to process everything with you. And I think if you understand that and you set those boundaries, you know when to stop sharing.
What about a reality show, though, that you want to have harder to set boundaries there? Or what do you envision? What do you envision that reality show of your dreams being like?
I think that, right now I'm in the process of being engaged. We were supposed to get married in October, but the coronavirus happened. But I started something called Finally the Bride, where millions of strangers are voting on our wedding. So that's been fun and also chaotic and weird. And I thought a reality show could be really cool about that. But again, that would only show one aspect of my life, which is getting married and my fiance and that stuff. There's so many things that people leave out. I think everyone thinks they know all these reality stars, but you don't. I often get really weird when people want to meet me in real life for coffee or just to get to know me, because they think they know me from online. And I get so weird because I'm like, oh my goodness, like that's only like a fraction of me. What happens when you get to know the full me, So like, I think people think they know me, or they think they know other people out there who are in reality shows, but you only know a fraction of them. And that's not to say they're being fake. I've always been my real self, but I also have other things that I only share with my close friends. I'll never, ever post about that would shock the world. I mean, it really would. I think we've all been through, I've been through some really interesting things in my life that the world doesn't know about, and I will never share them. It's my personal journey, but I share so much more.
I'm so curious now to find out what those things are.
Think about it, like everyone does. There's nobody online that wakes up with you every single morning, right? So of course I have many hours of the day that people never see. So we have to remember that about people, especially people we look up to. Look up to them, but don't try to be them, because you never really know what their life is. And you should just really focus on your own world instead.
Mm-hmm. Good advice. And then you also don't necessarily judge and leave a lot of unnecessary comments if you're really focused on yourself, right? Which is where the energy should lie. Another thing that happens when you start putting yourself out there and building a network, you said a lot of people reach out, they want to be friends or go for coffee, etc. They feel that they already know you. Also, a lot of people want to collaborate on things, right? There are a lot of projects that start coming your way, and you have a big personality, you have a ton of energy, right? I'm sure you get easily excited. Correct me if I'm wrong. So how do you keep that in check? And what are your kind of internal guidelines or steps to take? I'm completely projecting all over this question. I essentially need advice. Yeah. This is what it is. So what do you do to decide, whether to say yes to a collaboration or a project, pause yourself? How do you calm yourself down?
Yeah, I think you can't say yes to everything, though you wish you could. And I made this mistake. I used to say yes to everything, every podcast, every interview, every project. I was the yes person. But then I looked at my life and I had spent so long doing everything but what I had to do. And because of that, I didn't accomplish what I wanted, but I was always on television, and that's not happiness in the end. So I am like a paper person. I'll show you. I have a paper to-do list. I make this every single Monday. I highlight things. Every day I have my tasks for the day. So I try to schedule things inside of what I already have to work on, what I already have to do. And that means a lot of times I have to say no, or I have to say, please reach out in a month or 2 months. And that hurts. I don't want to put anyone down, but it's just the reality of like, I need my time to do what I have to do. And if I don't, I'm going to be totally off course. So I think understanding what your goals are that week or that month, and then dropping things in. I've learned this the really hard and ugly way is that you also have to schedule time for yourself. That's something I didn't do for many years, but now every day I try to have 3 touch points in the day where I do what I want. And that in the morning is running. In the afternoon, that might mean just reading the newspaper. I still read the newspaper. And at night, that means putting the phone away. Having those touch points allows me to just be me without the work.
How do you not get consumed though by the attention and people reaching out, and how do you not get consumed where all of a sudden, and you said you try to structure your time in your day, but do you feel that it's also did it ever become addictive, that constant energy coming your way?
For sure. And, I'm an Aries. We're stubborn. We love the spotlight. Someone says they want to interview you. You're like, sign me up. It's beyond addicting because people care about you. And that's a really nice feeling. And maybe people have to make that mistake on their own. I made that mistake where I did so many appearances, so many podcasts, but I lost my sense of self and I was so behind on my work. So maybe you have to go through that experience to sort of make the addiction go away. But now at this point, I'm like, wow, that's flattering. But look, maybe I'll only do 2 interviews a week and that's it. And if they can't accommodate you in October or November, then maybe it's not a good fit. The other thing I learned is that even though people want you right now, they can wait. They really can. And if they can't, well, then, you have to decide, is it something I want to commit to now or is it not worth it?
Right. That was a big realization for me too. It's like, I can say yes, but not commit to it being tomorrow or even within a week's time. I can say yes to a conversation or whatever, but it can be, in a few weeks. I'm already saying yes, right? I'm already being generous, but it takes time. And I do find, I hate saying that, but I do find that as women, we're more prone to, feeling bad with those boundaries, etc. So, relate to that quite a bit. What is your big vision or dream for your company, for your business?
Bridesmaid for Hire is 6 years old, which is so odd and so weird. And then with this pandemic, a lot of things got shaken up, but we're still back in business. We're still working weddings. We're launching a text to professional bridesmaid service where you can interact with the professional bridesmaid and text them with problems you have or concerns or questions or just anything going on with your wedding. We still plan to scale and work even more weddings, also have a virtual component. So we're growing, we're changing, we're not going away. I think it's been a great way of disrupting the wedding industry, which is such an old school, out of date industry that a lot of companies are disrupting since 2016. So that's been cool. So that's the future of Bridesmaid for Hire. And, who knows where it'll go, but I do think that it is something that the world needs and the wedding industry really needed.
And if you didn't have this business, what business would you start? What's on your radar somewhere in the back of your mind?
I don't have an idea at all, but I love the idea of an e-commerce store. I have a Shopify account just so I can learn Shopify, but I don't have anything to sell. But I would love to eventually sell a product. I'm in a service-based industry where I am the service, but I would love to sell a physical product where I can just sit back and just watch the sales come in, if it's successful. But I would love to eventually do that. I don't have an idea or anything, but I would love to just branch into that world eventually.
You think it's going to be something for brides?
Everyone's always asked me, what is a product for brides? And I'm like, they have enough. They spend enough money, So, I don't think so. We recently got a dog. So, of course, now my brain is like, what does a dog need that doesn't exist? But I don't know. Who knows? It could be a dog or a future baby or just even for people. I have no idea. I'm open to suggestions.
Fun. I really love that. Jen, thank you so much for your willingness to share, for being here, for your incredible energy. I'm a fellow Aries, so it's nice to sit back for a moment and get overtaken by the Aries energy and not have to
Yes.
emote all over the place myself. You're awesome. Keep doing what you're doing. I also love that you're taking what you're doing and your success, but also spreading the message and motivating people. So not just talking about business, but also motivating others. I think it's important and it's needed. And I also think that during the pandemic, so many of us have realized that we are in search of fulfillment and that we have been putting things off until better times and better days. So your, mindset and your approach to, just do it, start, even if it's small, even if it's baby steps, I agree with. And I encourage you to continue spreading that message because it's an important one.